Welcome back to the deep dive. We always try to get right to the good stuff here. No fluff, just pure exploration. And that's what we're doing today with a really cool cybersecurity tool.
Absolutely. And I think what's particularly exciting about this one is that it's something that's, well, it's surprisingly accessible, really powerful security insights, but without the typical enterprise price tag.
Right, exactly. And today we're focusing specifically on what we've seen demonstrated with the SA365 appliance from StoneFly.com. And honestly, what really grabbed my attention is just how much this thing can do.
Oh, yeah, it's impressive.
Yeah, like it really seems like it gives you a window into what's happening in your environment and helps you actually understand how to actually defend yourself better.
For sure. And, it's one thing to read about security threats in the abstract, but when you see something like this in action, like SA365,
Yeah.
actually giving you that clear view, of your systems and what's happening, it really drives home how important this kind of proactive approach is.
Totally. So, okay, let's dive into what SA365 actually does. At its core, it's like a central hub for all your security information, right?
Mhm.
Now, you might hear terms like SIEM thrown around, security information and event management, but think of SA365 as a cybersecurity tool that basically shows you everything happening on your computers and servers all in one place.
Yeah, you can almost picture it like a central intelligence center for your entire digital world.
Yeah.
It gathers and analyzes data from all these different points and gives you this big picture view of your overall security health, right, in that single dashboard.
So how does it actually gather all this intelligence? I mean, you've got all these different devices. How does it get the information?
Well, the key is what they call agents. So these are these lightweight pieces of software that you install on your computer's Windows, Mac, Linux servers, anything you want to monitor. And they act like, I don't know, like little digital spies almost, constantly sending information back to the SA365 appliance.
Okay, so these agents, they're not just like basic activity logs, right?
Uh-huh.
What kind of stuff are they actually looking at?
Oh, they get into some really interesting details, So not just like basic logs. They can check if your devices are misconfigured, if they have known vulnerabilities like software weaknesses that attackers could exploit. They can even detect the presence of malware.
Wow.
Yeah, and here's a really cool part. They monitor critical file directories for changes. Like if files are added, removed, or edited,
Yeah.
and this is huge, even the Windows registry. So any changes to those critical system settings, they get flagged.
The registry monitoring is something that really caught my eye because, I mean, that's like the heart of a Windows system, right?
Yeah.
And knowing that SA365 can actually track additions, removals, edits to the registry, that's got to be a really early warning sign for something malicious.
Oh, absolutely. Because, attackers love to mess with the registry. It's a way for them to hide their malware, to make it persistent, to change how the system behaves, and having SA365 track those changes. That's huge for detecting and responding to threats before they can really take hold.
So you've got all this data coming in from all these different agents, right? But it's not just like overwhelming you with a fire hose of information, right? It's got to be organized somehow.
Right. So everything gets pulled into this really intuitive dashboard within SA365. So instead of having to log into every single computer and dig through logs individually, you have this beautiful centralized view, like a bird's eye view of your entire security landscape.
That's really cool. And I'm guessing it can also like alert you when something important happens. You don't have to just be staring at the dashboard all day.
Exactly. So SA365 can send you alerts, via email or through other platforms, so you're immediately notified if something suspicious is going on.
But it's not just about seeing what's happening, right? I mean, SA365, it can also take action to protect you, can't it?
That's right. And this is where it gets really interesting. So they have this feature called active response. And what that does is it lets you define automated actions that SA365 can take when certain events are detected.
So it can actually fight back.
Yeah, in a way. So for example, let's say SA365 sees a bunch of failed login attempts, which could indicate a brute force attack. You can configure it to automatically block that IP address that's trying to break in right at the firewall level.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so it's like having a security guard that can actually intervene and stop the attack before it even gets started.
Okay, so we've talked about all these amazing capabilities, but how do you actually get SA365 up and running? I mean, is it complicated to set up?
No, actually, StoneFly.com has made it really straightforward to deploy SA365. Whether you want to run it on-premise, in your own data center, or in the cloud, they've got you covered.
Okay, and what about the actual server requirements? Like, how powerful does your hardware need to be?
So the good news is it's not as demanding as you might think. So, StoneFly.com recommends starting with at least 2 gigabytes of RAM and 2 CPU cores. But if you've got a larger deployment with more devices, more logs coming in, then you might want to bump that up to 4 gigabytes of RAM and 8 cores just to handle that extra workload.
Okay, so that gives our listener a good starting point for planning their SA365 deployment, whether it's in their own data center or leveraging some cloud infrastructure. But once you've got the appliance up and running, the next step is connecting those agents to the computers and servers you want to monitor, right?
Exactly. And the good news is adding agents is a breeze with SA365. The interface walks you through the process, so it's super easy to get started.
So let's say you want to monitor a Linux machine, running Ubuntu. What would that look like?
Yeah. Easy. You just select the OS, Ubuntu in this case, in the S365 interface. Then you give it the IP address with a host name of the SA365 appliance. You can give the agent a name if you want, maybe assign it to a group. And boom, SA365 gives you a single command to run on the Linux machine. You just paste that in, hit enter, and the agent's installed, configured, and ready to go.
And what about Windows machines? Is it just as simple?
Oh yeah, even simpler actually. So you select Windows, give it the server address, maybe a name, and SA365 gives you a PowerShell command. You run that as administrator on the Windows machine, and then you just start the SA365 service and you're done.
That's really impressive. So you can literally deploy agents across your entire network in minutes.
Yeah. And the cool thing is, once the agents are connected, you can immediately see them on the SA365 dashboard. You get all the essential information, the IP address, the OS, everything right there.
All right, so now we've got all this data streaming into SA365. What are some of the really standout features, the things that make it so powerful?
Okay, so one of the things that I think is really cool is how SA365 integrates with the MIT ATT&CK framework. Have you heard of that?
Yeah, I've heard of it, but I'm not sure I fully understand it.
So the ATT&CK framework, it's like a giant encyclopedia of attacker tactics and techniques, right?
Yeah.
It's based on real-world observations of how attackers actually operate.
Okay.
And what SA365 does is it takes the information it's gathering, from all the agents, and it compares it to this ATT&CK framework. So it can tell you, hey, this activity you're seeing, it matches this particular tactic that attackers use. So it helps you understand not just what's happening, but how it fits into the bigger picture of how attackers work.
So it's not just like a bunch of random alerts. It actually gives you context. Like, okay, this is what this might mean in terms of an actual attack.
Exactly. And that helps you prioritize your response, right? You know what to focus on because you understand what the attacker might be trying to do.
I see. That's really smart. So what else? What other features stand out?
So another big one is compliance. A lot of organizations have to meet these strict regulatory standards, like PCI for payment card data, GDPR for data privacy, things like that.
Right.
And SA365 can actually assess your systems against those standards, so it can tell you if you're meeting the requirements, and if not, it'll highlight the areas where you need to improve, so it really helps you stay on top of your compliance obligations.
That's really valuable, especially for organizations in the highly regulated industries.
Oh, absolutely. And then there's the Secure Configuration Assessment, or SCA, and this is all about making sure that your systems are configured securely in the first place.
So it's like a security checkup.
Yeah, exactly. So it checks your configurations against established best practices like the CIS benchmarks. These are these sets of recommendations for hardening your systems. And SA365 will give you the score, kind of like a grade on how well you're doing. And it'll point out any specific weaknesses it finds.
Okay, so it doesn't just tell you what's wrong, it also tells you how to fix it.
That's the best part. It explains why each recommendation is important. It gives you step-by-step instructions on how to remediate the issue. And it even shows you how to verify that the fix worked. So it's not just about finding problems. It's about helping you learn and improve your security posture.
That's fantastic, and I think that really speaks to the overall philosophy of SA365. It's not just about throwing a bunch of technical jargon at you. It's about empowering you to understand and improve your security.
Absolutely. And then we have vulnerability detection. So this is about finding those known security flaws in your applications, the things that attackers could potentially exploit.
Right, those CVEs you mentioned earlier.
Exactly. So SA365 can scan your applications, look for those known vulnerabilities and alert you so you can patch them or mitigate the risk. It's about being proactive, finding and fixing those weaknesses before an attacker can take advantage of them.
Okay, and I remember you mentioning something about integrity monitoring, especially for Windows. What's that all about?
So integrity monitoring, this is like having a watchdog constantly guarding your most critical files and registry settings. So you could tell SA365, hey, these are the files, these are the registry keys that I absolutely need to protect. and it'll monitor them for any unauthorized changes.
So if someone tries to modify those files or those registry keys, you'll know about it instantly.
Exactly. You get an alert right away so you can investigate and see what happened. And the cool thing is you can customize this to a really granular level. You can choose exactly which files and keys you want to monitor and how often you want SA365 to check them.
That's really powerful. And again, it ties back into that active response feature, right? So you could potentially have SA365 automatically take action if it detects an integrity violation.
Absolutely. So, for example, if SA365 sees that a critical system file has been modified,
Hmm.
you could have it automatically isolate that machine from the network, kind of quarantine it until you can figure out what happened. So it really limits the potential damage an attacker could cause.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here, but I think the big takeaway is that SA365 gives you this incredible level of visibility and control over your security, right?
For sure. It lets you see what's happening, understand the risks, and take action to protect yourself all in one place.
And it's not just about the technology itself, it's also about that philosophy of empowerment, helping people learn and improve their security practices.
Exactly. And I think that's what makes SA365 so compelling. It's not just another security tool. It's a platform for continuous learning and improvement.
All right. So to wrap things up, I want to leave our listener with something to think about. Imagine having this level of insight and automated defense protecting your own systems, all powered by this single appliance from a trusted provider like StoneFly.com.
Hmm.
What specific security concerns would you be most eager to address first with a solution like SA365?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it really highlights the importance of understanding your own unique security needs. What are the biggest risks you're facing? What are the blind spots you need to address? And how can a tool like SA365 help you fill those gaps?
Absolutely. And we encourage you to explore SA365 further, see for yourself how it can strengthen your security posture. And for all the details, you can visit stonefly.com.
And don't forget, you can also reach out to their sales team directly at sales@stonefly.com. They're incredibly knowledgeable and can answer any questions you might have.
Great point. Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive today. I want to thank you for joining us. And remember, the insights we've shared are just the beginning of a more secure digital future.
Absolutely. And with powerful solutions like SA365 from stonefly.com, that future is well within reach.
This deep dive was brought to you by StoneFly.com, the pioneer of SAN, NAS, S3 object storage, backup and disaster recovery, cloud and advanced AI applications and applications technology.
StoneFly has been serving its customers for over 2 decades, and their product, SA365, is deployed as an appliance for on-prem or cloud environments.
For more information, contact sales at StoneFly.com.
Until next time, stay safe and stay secure.
See you on the next deep dive.